Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with you here tonight. It's very encouraging to see people so far away, so united and committed to what we all believe in, that being justice, equality and freedom for all our people. I have a number of notes made out here, but I don't think I'll bother with them. I'll just try and speak to you as I would like you to speak back to me. At the moment, back home, as you're aware, we're going through a terrible time. The economy is in dire straits. Effectively, our people have a debt of about almost €250 billion around their necks. A debt incurred by private sector, by bankers, by developers, and a debt that has been transferred into a sovereign debt. It's an absolute impossible for us to break out of that straitjacket. We have been arguing and debating with the government and with the previous government that we need to take a different approach. The consequences of what is happening to our economy and what has happened to our economy means that thousands and thousands of our young people are currently leaving the country. An estimated figure in the last 2 years to 2.5 years would be approximately, and this would be fairly conservative figure, 150,000 people have left. On top of that, we have 450,000 people currently unemployed. We have, as I say, a rising national debt. We are in negotiations with the European Central Bank and the IMF on an interest reduction for the loans that they have given us to keep going. We are also negotiating with our European Union partners. The reality is that the debt is not just Ireland's, there's a huge debt in Europe, in particular Spain, Italy, Greece is bankrupt, Portugal is almost bankrupt, so you have a huge debt right across many parts of Europe. And if there is a plus in our situation and other countries' situation, is that it is a European problem and it has to be resolved politically within Europe. From our perspective, we have argued consistently that the banking debt should not have been transferred as a sovereign debt, and that the banks in particular, a toxic bank known as Anglo-Irish Bank and Irish Nationwide, should have been left go belly up, as we call it, and that we shouldn't set up with the National Pension Fund a state bank that would be in a position to lend to small businesses and generate stimulus in the economy. We argue that, that's Sinn Fein TD. Other parties thought different and implemented different policies. The reality is that we're on the road to restructuring, which is another methodology for default, and also an interest reduction, and the restructuring will push the loan out between 15 and 50 years. Whether that is, they're talking about 15 years at the moment, it's not sustainable. What has to be done, and what we have argued they need to do, they need to get the senior bondholders, many of them who are insured, to take a cut in what that they claim that they owed. If that comes about, it will lessen the debt maybe by 50 to 60%, and also by restructuring it and pushing it out over a longer period of time, it would make it possible for us to recover. Just touching on the actual debt itself, how was this incurred? It's all basically down to the electoral system in the 26 counties, which effectively, over the last 30 years, has become what we would describe as auction politics around being re-elected. Those who promised the most and give the greater tax concessions were most likely to be elected. The consequences of that is that you have a very low tax rate in Ireland, and also on top of that low tax rate, you have over 50% of the people that are not paying any tax. And that includes very wealthy people who have moved their money out of the country, and very wealthy people who are earning big incomes in the country that are not paying any tax. But in particular, that low taxation system The bankers and developers which drove the construction boom, as it was called, and I would call it the destruction of our economy, because we were building big housing estates way beyond the needs required. And at this point in time, in the 26 counties, you have over 300,000 unoccupied units, be they apartments, be they holiday homes, or be they ghost estates. And these are practically worthless at this point in time. So our economy is taking a huge hit. And maybe as part of my delivery here tonight, I want to try and relay that to the vision and the ideals of what Irish Republican stands for. And if we go back to the Rising of 1916, the Proclamation of 1916, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, exploiting the resources of that geographical area for the benefit of all the people, looking forward to build an Ireland where people would have rights and entitlements, would have proper health service, proper education service, look after your elderly, and jobs for people. And that was the vision of those great men and women. And that continues to be the vision to this day. And it's probably more relevant today than at any time in our history. When you see that when we had so-called independence, where you had an electoral system that was effectively born out of Civil War politics, where you had the island of Ireland divided into two entities. In the 6 counties you had a sectarian state, and in the 26 counties you had the remnants of a Civil War state. And you had no emergence of natural politics. And when I'm talking about natural politics, we had the logical position where you have emergence of people on the left and you have emergence of people on the right. And it would give people actual choices. And also what has happened is that the major political party and the state became one. From 1932 to 1948, Fianna Fáil were in power. And during that period of power, all jobs in relation to local authorities, in relation to services and so forth, they looked after their own. And that ensured that whether they were in power or out of power, they were still effectively in power because they had people in all the right places. And that effectively exacerbated itself over the last 15 to 20 years during what we call the Celtic Tiger, where an element within the political establishment and the banking establishment and the developing establishment became one. And effectively, if you were part of that circle, you were going to be very, very wealthy and had every door open to you. And the consequence of what happened is, if you compare it to Iceland, what happened in that period of time has amounted to those people responsible for the collapse of the Irish economy, responsible for mass immigration from our country, responsible for people on low income currently in poverty and trying to survive, responsible for the greatest emerging class of people in our country, what I would call the working poor, which is basically middle to low middle income families are now part of the working poor. Responsible for the fact that fees, educational fees, are going to be introduced for people trying to go to third level education. School transport has been hit for people going to primary and to secondary level schools, right across rural Ireland, been hit. Water charges are coming in. Home property tax, they call it, are coming in for everybody, irrespective of their income, at the same level. Effectively, you have a situation where they attacked the minimum wage and brought the minimum wage down. And we argue with it that what they were doing was absolutely stupid, because when you take money from the working poor and take money from people on unemployment and take money from people on the minimum wage, effectively you're taking more money out of the economy. Every person that's a low-income earner and that's on unemployment and that's single payers, whatever, they send every cent in their local economy. So they took this away, didn't they realise that, yeah, we made a mistake, we're going to get back, restore the minimum wage to €8 and 65 an hour. So that's where it's at that level. What we have been doing over the last number of months is setting up what we would call conferences. We set up a conference in Dublin, conference in Cork, there's one in Galway, there's one in Belfast. And the purpose of these conferences are to build a new republic based on the politics of Republican Labour. And we have been going out to ordinary people, inviting in people who will have respect, like Micheál Martin, who's a famous commentator. We brought in economists that have had a different view and were disregarded by the complying press. We brought in sports personalities. We brought in people who are role models, effectively, into these conferences. And we have been addressing the issue about building a new republic. And building a republic on the politics of the proclamation of 1916, which is not, as they would like to say it in the recent past, outdated. It is now more relevant, and more people are coming to that understanding that the politics of what was contained in the Democratic Charter of 1918 and 1916 proclamation is, and the vision that entailed, is the way forward in order to build a sustainable, equitable economy for all our people. And part of that is ending partition. Our country is partitioned, as you know, and the emergence of the Civil War politics and so forth. We spent a long time, maybe since 1988, trying to break down the consequences of partition in the 6 counties and trying to address the needs and requirements of all the people equally across the 6 counties. And part of that was initiating dialogue between people of unionist and loyalist persuasion, meeting them as equals, trying to persuade them that there was a different way forward. And out of that came the Good Friday Agreement, and from that day, from 1998 to this day, we're still trying to implement all aspects of the Good Friday Agreement. There are outstanding issues there to be dealt with, but they are going to be dealt with as we go forward. And also as a result of the peace process we have seen, and it's very, very evident, is that relationship between unionism, between loyalism, between nationalism and republicanism is at a place now where it never was before. We had a conference, Sinn Fein had a conference, what we call a summer school down in Ballyvourney in West Cork 2 weeks ago. One of the main speakers was Frankie Gallagher, former Commander-in-Chief of the UDA. We had another indoor conference, and Jackie MacDonald spoke at it. The one person who at one time, currently probably is the top person in the UVF. We have had occasions where Martin McGuinness and Peter Robinson were invited into East Belfast to address what was really a monster meeting, about 500 people in a room, all of unionist, loyalist persuasion, all working class loyalists. And the end result of that meeting was, when the meeting was over, practically everybody in the room came up to shake Martin McGuinness's hand, and they had far more in common with Martin McGuinness that they said themselves than they had with Peter Robinson. So that's Republican politics working itself out right across the island. In a situation in the Shankill Road, where people in the Shankill Road come across to the Falls and across the West Belfast to have representation made by them by Sinn Fein elected members. And you have situations, again, even in the very recent past, where you have, why will we oppose it on political reasons, the Queen coming to Ireland. That during that period of time, there was a big dinner performed in Dublin Castle by the President Mary McAleese. The Queen was present, Jackie MacDonald was present, the other unionist leaders were present, Frankie Gallagher was present. All of them inside, and the optics of it was quite unique. Inside in a room with the President of the 26 counties as guests, and the Queen there speaking Irish. So that gives you a sense, albeit when just from an introductory point of view, that gives you a sense of how things are starting to move and moving forward in a nice way, but in a way that's going to get us to where we have to go. And when we do realise that new republic and realise the aims and objectives of what Irish republicanism is, I'm very conscious that this year that we're commemorating the 30th anniversary of 10 great Irishmen who gave their lives in pursuit of that objective. Bobby Sands, Francis Hughes, Ray McCreesh, Patsy O'Hara. First four to die: Joe MacDonald, Martin Hurston, Mickey Devine, Thomas McElreevy, Kieran Doherty, all followed. And effectively, their deaths and the way they died, and the commentary associated with it at that point of time and afterwards, around what happened. One of them sticks out in my mind in particular, and that's the one I have missed. That's Kevin Lynch. Kevin Lynch, I think he was around the 8 to die. He was in prison. He won an All-Ireland medal at 16 years of age. He was in prison by he was 18, and he was dead by 24. And no different than any of the rest, but the reason it sticks out in my mind is the relationship that brought about, the cultural aspect of our country. And winning an All-Ireland medal, the County Derry hurling team, at 16 years of age. And the huge future he had as an athlete. And would have made the Derry football team or the Derry hurling team, and he gave all that up for our struggle. We have this, look at the rest of them. Bobby the poet, Francis Hughes, recognised worldwide as one of the greatest, what we would refer to as an IRA operator in his day. Fantastic. Ray McQueen and Tasha Harry, both of them died in one day. Young men again. All of those people that died, Joe McDonald, 2 kids. Then will we ever forget Gracie McDonald, and she kissed in the coffin before the body was fired over it. And the legacy that leaves us is the inspiration that allows us to continue this struggle until we arrive at the inevitable and certain outcome, and that will be a new and a real republic. Why did Bobby and all those men die? Why did scores of other lads put their name forward to die as well? Why did the women in Armagh want to go on the hunger strike? They had to be stopped because it would distract from it. They were on a dirty protest, and they had been on previous protests. All those great people labelled as terrorists, people without support, mindless bombers and gunmen, had no political support anywhere in the world. Thatcher tried to demonise them. The government at the time tried to demonise them. The Catholic hierarchy tried to demonise them. And, you know, the political establishment right across the island of Ireland tried to demonise them. Internationally, there was a huge effort made to portray them as terrorists, mindless men with no politics. We're sitting here tonight, each and every one of us remember those 10 men. We remember Frank Stagg as well. We remember Gahan, who also died in hunger strike. We remember Margaret Thatcher as somebody in the distant past, in the same way as you remember Stalin or Hitler. Remember the international attention that was drawn to the struggle that Bobby and his comrades were involved in, when Bobby won the election of Ferris out to home with over 30,000 votes. And today you see Sinn Fein, the largest party in the Assembly, having ministerial positions and Deputy First Minister in the government in the 6 counties. Sinn Fein having 17 elected members, both the Dáil and the Shannon. Sinn Fein being the leader of the opposition, not in numbers, but the very fact that they have credibility about what we have been saying about the economy and the way the economy has failed the people. And we have a situation where Irish republicanism is on the rise. And part of that is particularly around the policies that we have been arguing, and particularly the economic policies that we have been putting forward for many years now. All of them are starting to become relevant. They were rubbished, and our leaders were demonised because they said they were a fantasy. They had no place to play in this great Celtic tiger. We now know the Celtic tiger did not exist for most people. For 90% of people had no benefits from the Celtic tiger. We know there are tens of thousands of people at the moment who were conned by this whole objective about to get people to borrow money relentlessly from the scrupulous and greedy bankers, find themselves hopelessly in debt with no way of ever paying it back, and more than likely their homes to be repossessed. All of that has come about because people went away from what real, natural genuine, decent politics and political economics are. But greed was instilled in to try and telling everybody, well, if you borrow 100, 200,000 and buy a house, that house is going to be worth 300,000 2 years down the road. And people fell into that trap. But we have to change all of that. And that's what we're trying to do. And part of changing all of that is building the consensus in the island of Ireland for an agreed Ireland or a united Ireland in that context. Part of that is coming out here and speaking to you people to help us to achieve that objective. Part of that is going to America, going to England, Scotland and Wales, going to the continent and promoting the concept and the reality of the benefits of a united Ireland will be to all our people. And part of that is also about bringing forward the vision and the ideals of revolutionaries in the 19th century, 1916 right through, who had that vision and that ideals and that economic outlook that they had to make that a reality. And when we can do that and build a new republic, then and only then will we have effectively done justice to the men and women and their memory for what they have given and what they have done for our people and our country. We can achieve that. Together we can achieve that. We're working in a very cohesive and a very structured and a very persuasive and a very coordinated way. That is all possible to do. We cannot do it on our own. That's why we need you. We need people all over Australia and anywhere the Irish diaspora resides to help us to bring that about. How can you do that? If you're involved in a trade union movement, you can work through your trade union movement to try and influence people in that direction. If you're involved in politics, you can go into the political arena that you're involved in, and whether it is whatever political party or organisation that you're involved in, and to try and get them, that organisation or that party to adopt the concept of a new republic for the island of Ireland. And that is all achievable. If you're involved in sporting bodies, no matter what you're involved in, there is a role for you to contribute to that end. And all of us working together, we can reach that. And when we do reach that, there's the likes of the legacy that we dearly hold from Bobby and his comrades, and from Paul Peace and his comrades, and from everybody down through the years that were part of this great struggle. It's then and only then will we have done justice to their memory. And we will do that. I have no doubt whatsoever in the world. We will achieve an island, a new republic for the island of Ireland. At the moment, we're in even, you know, you have islanders partitioned all the time in a very geographical way. But more and more is becoming to be more mentally in certain areas of the economy. The Dublin government gave 11 million to Armageddon Hospital in Derry. That hospital is now serving Donegal and Derry and parts of Tyrone. A new road network from Achnatai right through to up to Derry, whole motorway structure. The government in the south has given 900 million towards that project. And from an agricultural point of view, an agricultural sphere, with the foot and mouth outbreak a number of years back and the blue tongue outbreak in the last 2 years, there is a structure in place within all Ireland health and safety within animals. In tourism, there's an all-Ireland structure in place regarding marketing and promoting Ireland as an entity in tourism. On the border areas, there is also structure starting to emerge around local government. And that again is a stepping stone, moving it along inch by inch by inch, to carry and build that reality from a concept to united Ireland and also to a new republic. But if we have, let's say if we do get a united Ireland, and you have the same economic policies being practiced by whatever government is there then, as we have had to live through, well, that united Ireland will not be what the paper is written. Flags will mean nothing if you don't have your economic strength. If you don't have economic equality across the board with equal opportunity for all people. If you don't treat your young people and give them a chance to develop the gifts and talents that every young child has through education. If you don't give them that right, well, you are failing. If you don't look after your elderly people, they can live out the latter number of years in their life in comfort and having served the country and the nation well. if we don't give jobs to people, meaningful jobs to people with a reasonable income, so as they can play their part in it, and if you don't give people the opportunity have freedom of expression, if you don't give people the opportunity to challenge you, if you don't give people the opportunity to march and to demonstrate for rights and entitlements, then you're failing everything that we're supposed to stand for as Democrats and in particular as Irish Republicans. Irish Republicanism is committed to bring about a new republic. Sinn Fein today is going to play their part in it. But Sinn Fein is only one group that's going to play the part in it. It's far bigger than Sinn Fein, or way bigger than Sinn Fein. It's about people playing their part. It's about influential people playing their part. It's about people who have been forced to, many of you here in this room probably had to leave Ireland in the 80s and maybe again in the 90s and the early 2000s because of the economic situation emerging there. It's about all of you having to play your part. So you can say at the end of the day, even though I was forced out of that country, even though I had to live abroad and work abroad and rear my family abroad, I have a vision and an ideal to live up to. I have a commitment to make to bring about my country having the rights and the entitlements and the dignity of having a job and having equality and equal opportunity. So we have to achieve that, and I'm quite certain we will. Thank you.